What's going on, everyone? AP over here at Run Pure Sports. It's the office hours. I'm here with my man Jordan from Sabersim. Members only this week, and we have a nice little situation here where we have an MLB slate locking in about 40 minutes. Gives us the opportunity to go through and take a look at what I'm doing on DraftKings today, using Sabersim, using our tools, the playbook. I was talking to Stevie earlier. I reviewed the playbook and everything, and I like where he's at. And I'll be honest, I'm not like diving as deep as our MLB team is right now. Still in the NBA streets, and I've been kind of running hot on MLB though. So I'm getting pretty aggressive on the slate, which I'll dive into and show you. Let me first bring in my guy Jordan. Jordan, what's going on, man? Is there any new updates, things at Saber that the Run Pure Sports members should be aware of?
Yeah, nothing brand new at the moment. We've got some interesting work going on behind the scenes. Definitely some cool facelifts coming to the entry editor and the late swap tool and a few other parts of the site here. So nothing new for me to walk through here today, but we've got some cool stuff going on behind the scenes that we should have ready soon. So.
Yeah, cool. Well, I think we should dive in, and I'll kind of walk through what my strategy was. And I think, if you're a member out there, I think this is something that you can easily replicate because I'm kind of doing this from a member's viewpoint right now too, just since I'm not going solely on my takes. I'm using a lot of what the team is saying, and then I'm using a lot of game theory, which I like to do early on in baseball. So one thing, Jordan, me and you were talking about before we hopped on and went live, I've been very under on Coors, and sure, some runs were produced last night, but I was heavy on the Royals and obviously, and Salvador Perez, but that game in general, and it got me different. Perez was 2% owned, which is wild. And what did he get us? He got us 2 home runs. So my only thing, I am multi-entering, but I'm not maxing out 150. And part of it's just bankroll management strategy. It's early on, I like to dip my toes in, and I like to get comfortable and get my process down. And so my number of builds is just going to, range. And that's just because if I'm plugging in 150 each and every slate, that adds up if your process isn't dialed in. So I think if you're out there and, your bankroll isn't into the multiple 6 figures range, I think it's a good strategy that you can easily replicate what I'm doing. Like today, let me talk about. So the $15 on DraftKings, I'm doing 40 into that. I'm doing a single entry into the 125. I think it's 10K up top. So real simple, not, overextending myself or anything like that. And here's what I did. The first thing I did today was, I always like this. I always bring up the playbook, which Stevie Boynton was on today, which was awesome. I always like to see the pitching pool and where we're at there. I did this yesterday and I did this the day before. And the very first thing I do after I've done that first review is I go to the pitchers. I pull up Saber, and I believe my screen is probably up right now, so you can see a lot of this in step 1. And I always have this up now. This is a full-on part of my process. Doesn't matter if I'm building one lineup or 150. This is just a part of my process. So now that I know I'm building 4, and what I wanted to do was, I think I wanted to definitely make a stand on this slate, and that's Woodruff. And I think he's going to be popular, very, very popular, actually, maybe 60, 70%. And I just wanted to lock him in. He's the guy I trust the most. The guy I don't trust at all, and which is aligned with what Stevie Boynton's on, is we're off Shane Bieber. X'd him out. I trust my guys over there. DC followed up. I had the show on the Mangone and Friends in the morning, or Mangone the Giant, like I like to call him, in his minions. I think it was DC that there's very similar thoughts on Shane Bieber. So you know what? X'ing him out. Then the other thing is, I'm going off the other pitching options here. So you'll see what I did is I condensed this down. And I X'd out a lot of different people, and I changed the projections up just slightly based on a few things that I like, and for it to align with me. And then I'll also show you can see over here, I added some min and max constraints there. So we're obviously locking in Woodruff. But then I wanted this nice range on Mackenzie Gore. I wanted him to be my primary SP2, so you can see the range there. And then these other two guys, Marquez and Keiko, I just wanted to have a little bit of piece, them sprinkled in as well. So that's what I've been doing and what I'm going to continue to do. For me, with baseball, I really like to define my pitching pool. And, on some slates where I don't have kind of like this conviction on a guy, or our team doesn't have a conviction on a guy, I'm not going to lock him in like I am today. But Woodruff, clear SP1, the guy that I just see being in the optimal lineup, I'm going to plug him into every build. So Jordan, let me kick it to you.
Yeah.
Step one, because I think if someone's out there, this is we'll go through kind of this process, and I think it's something they can replicate. How about you? Is this first step one? Is anything similar to kind of what you're doing with the MLB?
Yeah. So I do things a little bit different on my end. I end up leaning a lot more on the step 3 side of the process. But if you've gone ahead and you know exactly what your pitching pool, clearly the way you've got the setup here, what pitchers you want to play. You're taking the stand on Woodruff. You've got a range of exposures you're expecting to see on the other guys. If you know that kind of stuff up front and you know that that's how you want to tackle the slate, this is absolutely how I'd recommend going about doing it. Because then what that's going to mean is that we're going to build the set of lineups that makes sense, that fits these parameters here. And then in step 3, you've got a pool that represents your strategy that you wanted to take on the slate. You can do a little bit of fine tuning there. Me personally, a lot of times I'll leave things a little bit more wide open over in step 1, make more of my stands and adjustments here in step 3. But if you've got your strategy laid out and you're following the playbook and going about it that way, I love this approach.
Yeah. And if you've been following along with this show, Jordan and I kind of have, I think it's a slate by slate, obviously, but a little bit different strategies, but yeah, that doesn't mean one is right or wrong at all. Like there's so many different ways to win. I think it's just important to have a strategy and a belief and a process in doing things. I'm pretty, stubborn. I like to take stands and then the flip side is, especially with baseball, I think you can open things up, especially when we get into the hitters, which let's go ahead and do. This is something that I've been doing. I've had early success with it, so I'm not going to go away from it. So I just switched this to the batters. Mm-hmm. And so the next step for me was kind of reading through here in the playbook and then also listening to the show earlier. And I just pick up on little things. One, and this is just me, I'm early on in the season and probably throughout the season, I'm just making a stand on Coors Field. Like it gets so much attention, so much ownership. And for me with baseball and especially hitting, you still got to hit the ball. Like I know it's an awesome park. It's an absolutely awesome park, but it comes down to ownership. Now at times this season, I'm going to get burnt for sure. Mm-hmm. But I think I'm going to benefit more than the amount of times that I'm going to get burnt. And that's a tournament. That's game theory. That's if I was playing cash games, not at all. It's a different story. You're trying to mitigate risk. You're trying to waver through and find those little, things, eat some chalk, and then add in a guy that just is going to make your lineups work. So, but in tournaments, especially large field. So here's what I did. I bumped Philly way down, the run total right here. I love this tool right here. Mm-hmm. And I bumped the Rockies down just a little bit. So I'm not on the surface, trying to full fade these guys. And why? So the question that I think people will ask, why not just X them out? Well, I did X one team out, the Pirates, and that's just because I'm locking in Woodruff, and I'm hoping he mows them down. I don't want any of them in. Last night, so I did the same thing. I was under on Coors, and I was very high on the Royals game, and Salvador Perez and everything. My best lineup, which finished, I think, 18th in the $15. So it was up there. I had a couple Coors bats mixed in there. So yep. I don't want to full fade them because I'm missing out on some potential opportunities and fill-ins and everything there. So that's why I'm not Xing the game out. I'm just lowering the projection. So let me walk through a few of these games. Now I've ran pretty good the past few slates. So I'll be honest, I'm a kind of a progressive player. When I'm running good, I like to get more aggressive and, kind of going for that big win. And you'll see on the slate, I'm very, very aggressive on the White Sox in a tough matchup against Bieber, but I'm fading Bieber. And the one thing I picked up on the shows, if velocity is down for a pitcher, and if we're seeing that, these hitters are also seeing it, and they're going to pick up on it too. And while people I think are going to be lower on Bieber on this slate, I don't think many people are going to stack against him. And so in tournaments, you can get a ton of leverage by bumping up like I did here, the White Sox. I got bumped their team total, the implied run total up by maybe a run and a half or something. Very aggressive, like maybe too aggressive, I know, for you, Jordan, but I'm sticking with it here. I like to roll the dice a little bit, but so I bumped them up. I bumped the Guardians down. I bumped Coors down. I like the Braves. I bumped them. And then the Padres is the other spot that's going to be a core stack of mine. So Jordan, let me kick it over to you. This is kind of like my step 2 part of the process. And it's like something I do throughout the day. I'm not like, with how the slate 2 is broken up, we have these lock times that are, much later. And so I'm going to be updating this. So this isn't like my final where I might end up, since the slate is broken up. I could definitely change my tune a little bit here if the news hits differently. So talk to me about how you kind of do it on your end. If you're using these team totals right here, adjustments like that, or are you doing something different?
Yeah, I think adjusting the team totals is probably one of the best ways to add value to the Sabersim process, probably one of the best uses of your time. Just because overall, the coolest thing about it, and you mentioned this here, is that it's creating these correlated effects on the projections as you're making adjustments. So, I mean, you can kind of naturally fade Bieber here by increasing that White Sox projection. It's going to appropriately increase the projections for all the hitters on the White Sox. It's going to decrease Bieber's projection and so on for all of these different teams. So I've said it before. I really like making these adjustments to the team totals. I think it's a great idea. I think you can come at this from the game theory angle and say, especially on a 5-game slate, I want to take a stand here. I think this pitcher or this team is going to be overowned. So I'm making this adjustment from a game theory angle. I think you can also make this adjustment from the standpoint of maybe a team just looks a little bit low. Maybe you're not playing the ownership angle as much, or maybe you think, just a team is coming in a little bit low on the way that the Sims have a team projected. I think that's totally fine too. Some of the most valuable adjustments I think you can make in step 1 come in the form of bumping and changing those team totals around as you see fit. And then one other thing to add there too is, that's not to say, I know 5-game slate, only 10 teams playing here. You've made adjustments to every team. If you're out there and you want to get started and start adding value to this process here, you don't necessarily need to feel like you have to do this for every single team on the slate or every single game. If you feel like you've got an edge on one team, make that adjustment. If you feel like you've got an edge on one game, make that adjustment. But I like spending a little bit of time here and looking at these and making some tweaks there.
Yeah, very, very good point there. And I will say, like, again, I'm going pretty aggressive on this too. So like Jordan said, you don't have to like get that aggressive. If you got a team, like maybe it's just, I want to be under on Coors.
Right.
Maybe I want to bump Coors down, but I want to keep everything else the same. Do that. You're automatically going to be a little bit different there too. So let me go on to step 2 and I'll show you the settings that I used today. And I'm getting a little bit more comfortable with the settings here. Okay, first off, and I don't think this is going to, with how I built today and the adjustments I made, I don't think this is going to come up too much in my lineups, but we have a smaller slate. It's baseball. Allow hitters against opposing pitchers on smaller slates. I'm totally cool with that. Baseball is a crazy sport. You can have a pitcher do very well. Maybe maybe the pitching options aren't that great, but I think like most of the time this is going to be checked, and it's going to be checked by default for a lot of people. So you're not going to get any hitters against pitchers. Well, if we have a slate where pitching options suck, those guys might not go very long. So in the overall scores by your pitchers that you're playing might not be great anyway. And you don't want to fully eliminate, in my opinion, the bats that are going against, guys that are coming out, later on in different innings. So I do this on smaller slates, 5, 4, especially when you're getting down to like 3 games.
Yeah.
You definitely don't want to, eliminate the ability for hitters to go against the pitchers that they're facing. So, but if we get to bigger slates, I usually have this turned off. And like last night, I had it turned off. Today, I have it on. Correlation, I brought down a little bit just because, for 2 reasons. So, less number of games, less number of teams playing. I think we could get, and scoring overall has been down. So I want more kind of one-offs in there. I don't want as many like 5-3 type stacks. I want a little bit less correlation there on slates like this. Sim variance, I kept pretty high. Honestly, I was looking at 7 to 9. So I was looking to keep that high. Everything else, pretty standard. The other thing that you can do also is just use, and this is like something that did my window go down? Are we good?
Yeah, I think you're good now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting some connection issues on my end. My apologies there. I don't know what's going, but anyways, the other thing that you can do here is just using the pre-adjusted settings, which I also use. I just, on this slate, I wanted to fine tune them a little bit since I'm getting a little bit. Talk to us about step 2.
Yeah. So, I mean, a couple things I'll just mention there right off the bat. I will say, if you're new to Sabersim, AP's obviously been pretty familiar with the tool. We've been doing these streams, getting used to it. If you're brand new to Sabersim, don't feel like you need to make a bunch of changes to the sliders here. Just setting the defaults to the contest you're playing are going to give you a really good baseline, and you can spend more time on steps 1 and 3 making adjustments. But I'll talk about a couple of the things you mentioned here. First of all, that allow batters versus opposing pitcher. I got no problem turning that on a 5-game slate. On a 3-game slate and lower, it will start to come on automatically by default. The one thing to remember there is, your risk with that toggle being on is never very high anyway, because we're using simulations to build each lineup. So if you do get a hitter versus your pitcher in your lineup with that toggle on, it's not just because based on the average projections and the salary that those guys kind of both fit into the lineup. It's actually that you got a set of sims for that lineup where those 2 players were optimal together, even though they're negatively correlated. So I got no problem turning that on. I think you probably won't get many lineups that actually have that in them anyway, but no problems there. A couple other notes. I will say, I think it's a wise idea. If you are making significant adjustments in step 1 to take an ownership stand, like AP's doing here, I like the idea of turning down ownership fade slider like you had it set. I think you had set it 1. I like that idea a lot because you're already getting a lot of value out of the ownership adjustments based on the way you've changed the team totals. Yeah. So you don't necessarily want to double count it as much in the lineup building process. So you're gonna have some really contrarian lineups in step 3. So I do like the idea of making that adjustment there. And I actually think the correlation adjustment's interesting too here. It's April baseball. It takes a little while for these teams to heat up, for the weather to heat up, for run totals to start going up. The idea of being willing to play maybe a little bit smaller stacks and things like that here this time of year, I think it's interesting. So I like the adjustments you've made as they kind of fit into your process overall, your thinking here. And for everybody else out there, I would say, you can definitely start to make some adjustments in step 2 once you get familiar, but this isn't the first place I would rush to start making making changes.
Go ahead. I was just gonna say I like that you caught that. The only reason I adjusted the ownership fade down was because I'm making so many stands already in step 1. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times we have people say like, what are the best sliders to use? And if you're asking that question, the answer is use the defaults for your contest. But if you've got a reason that kind of fits into your overall strategy, your overall process of what you're doing to make changes, then change them, So I think if it's like, hey, I'm already making adjustments based on ownership in step one. Should I turn down ownership fade slider? Yes, absolutely. What's the best ownership fade slider to use? Well, that depends. And if you don't know, use the defaults is kind of the way I always present it. So anyway, I like what you've got here as it fits into the rest of the process. So
yeah, and I'll show you where so you could see here, here's the other thing. I'm running this multiple times all the way, I was watching the show or I was reading the content, then watching the show, 10:55, 11. Then right before this, I kind of fine tuned and finalized where my thoughts were. So let me just click on that and I'll bring up, because I'll show you I'll show you what I believe Jordan was talking about kind of in step 3 here. So
yeah.
One thing that I do, okay, so obviously, I'm getting Woodruff in a ton of my lineups. The first thing I do here is I go to teams and I want to then see what my exposure is. Now, I'll be honest, I'm kind of getting really aggressive on this slate. And that's just my style when I've been hitting good. I just want to kind of double down, and I'm managing it by not, playing that 150 by dialing it back with 40 today. But I still want to have that mindset that I have, because I'm competing against guys that are playing 150. So since I have less in there, I need to be more aggressive. And you can see here, 70%, it actually spat out 100% White Sox stacks. And so that goes back to what Jordan was alluding to in step 1. I probably got a little bit too aggressive by bumping up that team total. I think what he said on the last show that we did, starting with a half run adjustment, maybe to 1 run on the spots that you like, is a prudent first route.
Yep.
I was kind of rushing things too, because I wanted to get this all done before the show. And so I didn't fully go through what I'm going to go through for kind of like a main slate, but I wanted to still give a high level. So, what I did here is, and I also ran, I think it was like a pool size 500. And I normally will go, 1,500 if I'm doing more lineups and if the slate is larger. But since it's a smaller slate, since I'm taking more stands, I wanted to just get through it kind of quicker. So 500 was plenty. And then I can now manage it here. So I don't want to be 100% on the White Sox in every lineup I did. So I'm going to bring that down to 70. Still incredibly aggressive, considering they're going to be very, very low owned. I mean, this is similar to my stance on the Royals yesterday, which got me a ton of Salvador Perez. And so today it's getting me a ton of Timmy Anderson, a guy I like right there in the 1 hole, who has that type of upside that Salvador Perez showed us. I think he's going to be very low owned relative to the size of the slate. Braves are my second stack, Padres, and then you can see I have a little bit of exposure to some of these other teams on the slate too. But you can see I've defined my pitching pool, and now I've really concentrated on a few contrarian stacks. I've used the min and the max tools to help define that, and I could take it a step further too. I just decided to keep it simple. I decided to stay aggressive. Do you go right to this page, Jordan, or kind of what are you doing in the step 3?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I spend a lot of time looking at my stacks, both the teams I'm stacking and the actual stack constructions. I highly recommend spending time studying these exposures, whether you want to do it on the individual player level or the stack level, and making sure it's in line with the way you want to attack the slate. What I love about this here is that you're kind of using every tool at your disposal to get these lineups the way you want. I know sometimes people, they try to come in, they leave everything alone in step 1, they leave everything alone in step 2, and try to do everything in step 3, and they can't get it all the way there, and they get a little frustrated. Or people make adjustments in step 1, build the lineups, and just take whatever they get in step 3, and then the slate locks, and they're like, why do I have 100% stacks against Bieber or something like that? So spending the time to check your exposures here in step 3 and doing some fine tuning, right? Like you said it, you want to be higher on the Braves and the White Sox, but you don't need 100% stack exposure to those teams. Bringing that exposure down, I think, is a great idea. One thing too that I'll mention is, like, if you think about this more on the individual player level, which I know everybody kind of thinks a lot about stacks in general for baseball, that's kind of generally how I focus on it too. But if you do want to, focus more on individual players or something like that, bumping or capping your min and max exposure to players on that tab instead is actually still kind of naturally going to change your stack exposures the way you would expect to, because these lineups have already been built in a way that's correlated. So just something else to think about there. But I like this approach. I spent a lot of time making these adjustments and getting my team exposures where I want them as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of what you could do is, okay, so I like how it automatically will change too.
Yep.
So, because we have all of the, we picked a pool size that was plenty big. So let's just say we take, maybe 70% is far too aggressive. We know it's going to be a low in spot.
Mm-hmm.
Let's cap it at 45. And then here's another thing I've done too. We're already making a lot of stands by being under on Coors. So we can open up the pool a little bit and we can start capping some of these games, maybe at 45, that's the right number. I mean, the key here is just playing around with it, and you can see how things change here. So, and the other thing I like to, and one thing that you said that I think is important, study your lineup, study what's coming up. How you can do that is clicking this button right here, and it's going to bring all of your, my White Sox stacks up. So I can go through in here and I can browse all these stacks and I can see kind of where I landed. I can go and Padres is another one I was high on. Well, the guys are high on. Hoop had them last night, and I believe Stevie Boynton and DC were on them today. So this is one where we don't have those lineups confirmed, and so we're gonna have to. I don't think they're confirmed anyway. So this is going to be one where we could get a different lineup, and we can adjust that with the late swap tools, making it very easy. But I love that. So you mentioned something. The stack section, is that where you? Is this where you wanted me to go to?
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's worth looking at, right? So, I mean, you, especially with knowing that you would turn down your correlation a little bit. So, I mean, good news is, or maybe not so good, depending on how you want to approach the slate, right? We're still getting a lot of those big stacks, still some 5-3, some 4-4s, but I mean, you start to see some of these a little bit less correlated stacks start to peak in. You got the 3-3-2, the 4-2, the naked 5 stack. So, and yeah, I mean, if that's kind of the direction that you're going, bringing the correlation slider down, you can see it's having a little bit of an impact here. And especially on a 5-game slate where maybe you need to get a little bit closer to that optimal, maybe that's the way to go. So I normally like to look at the stacks tab and just see what I'm getting and do a quick kind of gut check here. For me, mostly it's on like bigger slates, 10 games plus. I'll do a little bit of cleaning up in the stacks tab here and just, I might X out some of the stacks that only have like a 3-team or a 3-player stack or something like that, or some of the 4-2s on the big slates. But on a 5-game slate like today, I'll probably play virtually whatever stacks come out of here. So,
one other question, because I kind of consider myself maybe a medium to upper stakes player, and when it comes to multi-entering, when I first started out, I was like, all right, let's get it. I'm going like 125 to 150 in these. And I'm like, whew, this can add up if you're not hit. So you got to keep the long-term vision in mind. And so what contest would DraftKings has what? They have the Quarter Mania. They have $1.50, right?
Yeah, there's $1 and a 50-cent 150 out there on DraftKings. Too many maxes.
I wish they had I wish they would bring out a main $5 like they have with PGA. I think that would be a successful tournament for them to have. Right in that $750 range. And I think it would be, pretty nice. Maybe DraftKings will work on something like that. But for now, I mean, if someone's just getting into this, max those things out, right? The 50 cent, the 25 cent, the $1, play around with it. I mean, that's until you get your strategy down. And that's probably something I should be doing too. We just, it's easy to get suckered into that, 100K up top, but is there anything just contest wise for someone who wants to get into multi-entering, wants to start using Saber? And I think baseball is the best sport to do it, because any the best hitters in the world can go 0-4. I'm telling you, and some of the worst hitters can have good nights. It's such a sport to embrace variance, and the more you do, the better you're going to be. In my opinion. So, I mean, is there a contest selection that you think people getting into it should be looking at?
Yeah, for sure. So I will say DraftKings baseball contest selection, sometimes I'm a little bit disappointed with it, to be honest. I think those mini maxes are good. They can be a good opportunity to get the feeling for what 150 lineups feels like and managing all of those lineups. But there's a lot of lineups in those contests that are filled up with other relatively sharp players that are maxing that out. And I think those can be pretty tough contests to beat. I actually, I think on the FanDuel side of things, there's some better options out there at across all stakes. Really, I think if you are playing the low stakes stuff, there's a 150 nickel contest, but also a quarter contest that is like really affordable to max out and just get your feet under you for playing 150. And the big GPP on the FanDuel side of things, it's not 100K to first. It's not even 50K to first, but you get 30 to 40 up top for $5 an entry. I think if you want to mess around with the bigger tournaments with the bigger prize pools up top, I think that can be a better place to start. The DraftKings one is it's a big jump. It's whatever, $15 to $20 an entry. I know it's got the bigger prize up front, but you can take $100, $200, $500 way further on the FanDuel side on that flagship GPP than you can on DraftKings. And so I've actually been playing a little bit more FanDuel for baseball this season as opposed to DraftKings. But if I were to kind of just say, if you're brand new to baseball or really just diving in and trying to get your feet under you for this season, I would focus on the lower stakes stuff first and just basically try to get like as many unique lineups in play as possible to spread out your variance and get familiar with the sport.
Yeah, very good. And then lastly, the entries tab. So,
yeah.
Here, pull this up when it loads. Is there actually one side question? Sometimes I've noticed that there's certain times where going from step 2 to step 3 when it's running, sometimes it will take longer than others. Is that just, is it just sometimes like maybe the system's crowded, or, it's never really taking like that long or anything like that. But I just didn't know, maybe it's on my end or something I'm doing in my settings. Is there anything in there that makes it take longer? If that question makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So, typically there's a couple things that can take a build longer. If you have a lot of manual stacking rules or player groups that you've made, that can add the time it takes to build lineups a little bit more. If you've increased your number of min uniques as well, that can be an increase of the time it takes to build lineups. The last one is, I would say, slightly at higher sim variance settings, it can also take the build longer to build. With that said, though, most of the time when I hear people or see somebody that's kind of stuck with a build that's just taking a while, I think you're probably better off just like canceling it, clicking the little red X and just starting over and seeing it's faster. Even me, every so often I'll get one where it's just like, oh, this build's running kind of slow. Don't really know what happened there. It's just a slow build, and just canceling it and starting over is generally the easiest way to proceed. But lots of rules, or higher than one min unique setting in the build settings in step 2 is a pretty surefire way to make your build take a little longer.
Gotcha. So yeah, we can see right here. So obviously, okay, so there's going to be, I'm going to have to make a change here. And I was kind of hoping something like this would happen, but yeah. I have a ton. Obviously, I'm very high on the Braves, and we got Austin Riley, who's out. Looks like wife's having a baby.
Yeah,
I believe. I like that you put that note in there. So congrats to Austin Riley. We should also make note that little father narrative when he comes back, maybe a little extra motivated. So what am I doing now to kind of retain everything I wanted to get to this point? But we want to get him out without fully like messing up all the different settings and all the work that we did from steps 1 through 3.
Yeah. So we have a pretty cool tool for this. And this is something that I specifically use for baseball quite a bit. So if you click that swap button here, and this will be kind of, I guess, so
late swap or quick swap.
Well, let me start here. So lock is in 5 minutes. In reality, if you had the time to rebuild everything, I think best practice would be to actually start over, not completely, not from scratch, not your whole strategy, but with one more fresh build with the news that Austin Riley is out. But let's assume that we kind of want to do this in a quicker way possible. We've only got a couple minutes, or even if it was after lock. Yeah, quick late swap. Click the swap button and then click late swap.
Yep.
And then down here at the bottom, we've got this toggle, only swap lineups containing out players. So I use this a lot for baseball for basically exactly this reason, right? So we've got a lot of Austin Riley, but I don't want to completely blow everything up and rebuild every lineup just because Austin Riley got ruled out. So this will now only swap the lineups where that affects something. And in this case, it's 21 lineups, but we can go ahead and click that here. And now we'll rebuild, and it will rebuild in line generally with the overall strategy that you had taken from the original, step one, the adjustments you made to the team totals, the min and max exposures and things like that.
The great thing about that too is like, over half, or I guess I didn't see how many Austin Riley builds I had, but I think it was around 50%.
Yeah.
So that means I'm not touching 50% of my lineups. So I think this is a really nice way to do it if you're, crunch for time. And, I think I'm under in that first game too. So it's not like it's going to impact me. I think I have more time. Like, honestly, when we're off this show, I'm probably going to readjust things a little bit too, but here we go. So now we have, okay. So this came up. What do I need to do here? Do you see that we need to expand the lineup pool in order to match your exposures, or I don't need to touch that, right?
Yeah. So this is where it gets a little tricky here. So what's probably happening here is that with the variety of different exposures that have been kind of put in here, there's 4 lineups of the 21 that it can't swap. So what I would do in this situation is I would just download this. I would take these 17. Download these and re-upload it as a new file, and then go back to the entry editor and just use the quick swap tool to get Riley out of the remaining 4.
Gotcha. Okay.
And what the quick swap is going to do is it's
download that.
Yeah. So I download that and upload that, and that's fixing that. 17 out of 21, you're good to go. That you got these resolved now here. And then the remaining 4, we can use the quick swap, which will just take Riley out and put in the next best overall projected player into the lineup.
Gotcha. So, okay. So this is probably, so I changed the settings there too, which, I kind of, I don't mind. I was kind of maybe a little bit too aggressive there to begin with, but this kind of broadens things out a little bit. So,
yeah,
I don't mind that. So let me upload this since I'm doing it right now. So what I did is, and then what's the next step?
Oh, sorry. You broke up a little bit there on me. What did you say?
My apologies. I don't know what's going on with my connection. I just did a speed check and it's all good, but it's a member only show. Our members, they forgive us. So, I downloaded this. And so the next thing that you do, can you walk them through that process too, to change those last lineups?
Yep. So now let's go back to the entry editor, the entries tab here.
Okay. Do I need to re-download my stuff?
Let's go over to the entries tab and we can take a look. I'll show you how we can see.
Okay. Sorry, I was just uploading those. So we're back in entries. Okay.
So now what I'll do here is on the right, let's just search for Austin, or on the left, I'm sorry. Let's just search for Austin Riley here and see how many lineups are left with him in it. So, okay, so 3 lineups still have Austin Riley in it. So what I would do at this point now is just hit the swap button in the upper. Yep. And then and this time do quick swap.
Quick swap. Okay.
And then we're just going to say all out players swap with the next best available. So we can click apply and download. And there you go. So actually, okay. So it's probably good that we looked at this because it looks like Gavin Lux has since gotten ruled out as well. So that took out Riley and Lux, 5 lineups total. that should have, we don't see it on your screen here, AP, but that should have just downloaded another entries file directly to your computer. You can upload that, and then you should just be good to go.
Got it. Yeah, and actually, so I probably just missed the cutoff. I had one error. That's it. So maybe it was trying to. There must have been one guy from the early game, which that's fine. It's a slate where we're gonna have other. We're gonna have other people that we can go to as well. So that's so I've ran into that problem a couple times, and I'm like, I didn't really know what to do, so I learned something new there. That's a easy way to get it done. I like that.
Yeah, and so I mean, when you do have a lot of exposures and different things set, it can be a little bit harder for the late swap to find those lineups. So sometimes it does take a little bit of you do a little late swap here, you do a little quick swap there. You're using the different tools at your disposal to get everything tightened up, but pretty easy to get it figured out.
Yeah, and I like, so let's wrap this up just by, so now that we made those changes and we're all pretty good and set. I mean, obviously we're gonna keep an eye on. Are there any other lineups that have yet to be released, or are they all good for this early slate?
Let's see. I think we're waiting on the Reds. I think.
Okay. Yeah, Reds and Padres. Yep. Oh,
Padres just came out.
Okay, so yeah. And I don't even know what I'm doing, because we can easily do that by going to the home screen here. And you guys have, once those check marks is up, that's why it's just so nice. So I throw it up on my other screen. I can do today I've been working on PGA. I've been working on because it's a team event. And what's crazy about PGA, Jordan, is like last night on the show, we're like, oh, this event sucks, like not excited about it. Now I'm like, and we're all like, oh, I'm gonna not play normal volume. Now I'm thinking I'm playing a normal week, if not maybe a little bit more. I've been diving into these teams. So, and like DraftKings, they threw out a ton of really nice contests. So, but what I'm getting at is I can just have this screen up and, I can update the projections. I can wait for these check marks. Once these check marks are there, I know I'm good to go. Yep. So it does look like you said, we're just waiting on the Reds there. So, again, if it happens to where a guy gets ruled out, like I had 50% Austin Riley, let's just say someone else, gets ruled out. I can go through that same process that we just went through, a few minutes ago. Very, very easy to use. Any other comments there?
Yeah, no, I would say looking at those green check marks and waiting for that is always a good sign there. So, I mean, it looks like we do have another situation here where Austin Nola is not in the lineup for the Padres here. And it looks like we've got 34% Austin Nola here. So I mean, I would probably do the same approach here is start with that late swap, rebuild those lineups, see what you can get done there, and then maybe do another quick swap. If you're in a pinch too, it's always perfectly fine to just jump to that quick swap and just do that. That's the fastest way to get a player out of your lineup.
This is another really good one. So it looks like is Tellez the other one, or do we not have that lineup yet?
No, yeah. So a little confusing, I guess here.
This is perfect. So if they're not in green, it means they're not in the lineup, right?
No, not exactly. So if they're grayed, so the grayed out players are already locked into the lineups.
Okay, gotcha.
So those games have started. So if you scroll back up to Nola, it should be a little, so it's that darker, like you can kind of see it. It's like black, almost like a really dark gray. This guy's out. And his projection has been set to 0. So Nola's not in the lineup. Those other guys that the names were just grayed out, that just means their game has started.
So if this happens to you out there, we go through that same process, right? We go swap, late swap, and we'll keep the settings the same.
Yep.
And now do we check this again?
I would, yeah. And let's just only swap those Austin Nola lineups.
We click late swap. It's going to do this for us. Man, that's like so easy for baseball. Is it better since we know that game is starting a little bit later? Would it be better for me just to wait till we have that official lineup since we have time, or do you just are you just typically running it?
It's up to you. I mean, the later you wait, the less options it's going to have to swap to. So I think probably the better.
So here we have that same issue. We click no, and what we'll do is doing it again.
Yeah, no, it's all good. We got you. So yeah.
So anyways, going through that same process. I guess one thing too, I've never seen this warning tab right here. Can you see that?
Yep, I can see it. So if you click that, it should show you the three. It's basically showing you the lineups that it can't swap.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, and probably, so I don't know exactly what's going on here, but what I expect is that like, it's probably some salary constraint with like locking Woodruff in as pitcher and requiring a certain amount of White Sox stacks and other things like that, it can't find a swap.
I gotcha. No, that makes perfect sense. But I mean, updating it. So now it's, we only got three lineups to change. So, and what we can do is just, go to
so first you'll want to make sure that you download this entries file and upload this one. And then once you've done that, we can go right back to the entries tab and do the quick swap for the remaining three. So
now it's just, now we do the quick swap.
Yep.
There we go. Easy enough.
So it looks like Voigt's out of the lineup too. So
okay.
Pick that up as well.
Sounds like I'm going to be doing this all day. 5 games.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say
expecting that, but that's a really a good way to cover yourself for sure. So, I am going to, let's see. Yeah, we should probably wrap this up because I gotta fine tune these two. But I mean, I'm glad we could at least do this live, on air. I apologize for the connection issues. Hopefully, it wasn't too bad. And hopefully you were able to see this process because I do think it's one that's really nice. And I think, Jordan, we can look for other opportunities to do this, maybe bring others on, we'll bring BigT on and get him to talk through it as well. Maybe we could do a 3-man booth, but I think if we could align this office hours with some of these slates, I think it's going to be a lot more productive. And I'm going to be learning something new each and every time. So do you have any final thoughts, any final, things that we should be looking out for here in the future with Sabersim?
Yeah, I'll just say one other thing here, especially with the late swaps. And if you're doing swaps with different methods and you've got news all coming at you and all this different stuff, maybe you made some changes directly on the sites and stuff's out of sync. You're getting errors on your upload. Like, who knows? With late swap, it can kind of just be frustrating with a lot of stuff going on. And sometimes maybe it's not working the way that you expected. If you end up in a situation where the swaps aren't going the way that you expect, stuff's not working, I would always at that point just start with a fresh entries file. And we've made that very easy. If you just click that upload new entries button real quick there, AP, just so I can show people this here before we get out. This will basically allow you to re-upload that entries file. If you click the download template file from DraftKings, that'll download the current entries file you have in there, and you can.
Gotcha.
It's basically like start over. The one thing if I were you right now, I wouldn't go all the way and actually apply it just yet.
I'm not going to do that because I'm not savvy enough. It'll mess my stuff up.
Well, and it won't mess anything up. It will just, you won't necessarily have the same custom exposures in here anymore.
Gotcha.
So it is definitely like something you only really want to do if you're in a pinch, you're running out of time, you got to get it in because it will reset your custom exposures. But another thing that does come up, and I know especially for NBA, 12-game slate later in the season and news is breaking every few minutes, and it's easy to at some point have something go kind of wrong. That's a very easy way it's basically your reset button.
Gotcha. Okay.
But that's all
very good. Yeah, no, good. This was helpful. And again, if anyone ever has any questions related to Saber, baseball, any sport, always feel free to send me a message and we can make sure that we tackle it on the show. But let's end it there. I'm AP. That's Jordan. Simon, get us out of here.